This is Chuck Thompson speaking to you from Yankee Stadium, where the Baltimore Colts are playing in the first overtime period in the history of professional football.
The 40 years that I've lived after this giant game was the most talked about game. They never asked me about Green Bay. They never asked me about Detroit. They never asked me about Cleveland. It's always a New York game.
It kind of like almost revolutionized the whole sport itself. And then I think the NFL kind of caught hold and said, hey, wait, hold on a second, we got something here.
Well, I don't know if it was my best game or not, but it was the most emotional experience that I ever had in professional football.
I never was at a game where I thought that the stress and the strain might be so much that I wouldn't walk out of the press box. I feared a heart attack.
The ending, more than anything else, is what I think made people say the greatest football game ever. Because, number one, they had never seen a football game go into overtime. Never.
If you look back at what it accomplished and what it did for the NFL and television, the recognition of the American public, what a game football is, what a great game for television.
All the fans, all the people that are sitting in the Yankee Stadium were sitting on the edge of their seats. The people at home could not leave the TV set to go places they had scheduled to go that afternoon or that evening. It really made the National Football League.
In Yankee Stadium, on national television, in the cold and the dark and the gloom, and it was a tremendous theatrical moment, and the first real theatrical moment nationwide that pro football had.
United States, he gives to Amici, and the ball game is over. Alan Amici has scored the touchdown, and the Baltimore Colts are the professional football champions of the world.
By 1958, President Eisenhower's famous grin beamed brighter than ever. A booming economy was providing Americans with more leisure time than at any previous moment in the nation's history. People were following sports like never before. But in most living rooms, the premier television sporting attraction was still baseball. Although the national pastime would remain on top for another decade, pro football was beginning an ascent that would ultimately make it the nation's favorite game. And no city was more eager to embrace the NFL than Baltimore, Maryland.
The Colts of 1958 brought Baltimore a distinction that it never had before. Baltimore, for over 50 years, was looked upon as a whistle stop between Washington and Philadelphia, and not many people got off the train when it stopped. Navy Notre Dame played here every other year, sometimes consecutively. That was looked upon as a bowl game, and the Preakness every spring. Other than that, Baltimore was a minor league city. Baltimore had not had a championship team on a major scale all the way back to the three-time world champion Baltimore Orioles of the 1890s, the glorious teams under Ned Hanlon.
When Weeb Ewbank was hired as head coach by owner Carroll Rosenblum, the Colts began an amazing turnaround. In 5 years, Ewbank transformed the league's worst franchise into a powerhouse by drafting superior talent, while also discovering unpolished gems discarded by other NFL teams.
The most difficult offense to stop is the offense that can run and throw. They can throw to a lot of people, they can run with a lot of people, they can run everywhere, they can throw everywhere. In essence, I just got through describing the Baltimore Colts under Weeb Ewbank and Carroll Rosenblum. That was the type of team that we had. It was a perfectly balanced football team. Consequently, it was a world champion.
The defense was of equal quality, anchored by a front four that included Hall of Famers Art Donovan and Gino Marchetti.
Because we had such great pass rushers, it gave us an opportunity to play more of a standard defense. We didn't believe in blitzing a lot.
And we played zone most of the time because of the great pass rush we had, because the quarterbacks did not have a long time to hold the ball, to find a receiver, to throw it. They had to go back, look, release the ball right away, and most of the time, one of us was right there.
Yet even the defense understood the Colts' championship dreams rested on the shoulders of one man.
John Unitas controlled the Colts. He grabbed them by the nape of the neck and would not let them lose. He just constantly exhorted them to be better. John Unitas was the reason the Colts were a great team then. They had lots of great players, but not having John Unitas, they would not have been a great team.
The Colts learned how valuable their quarterback was after an incident against Green Bay.
John had run the ball, and this guy Simak came over. The play was all over, and he jumped with 2 knees on John's back. Now, why they didn't throw him out of the league for doing that is beyond me.
Unitas was lost for 3 games and replaced by backup George Shaw, who was immediately tested the following week at Yankee Stadium. Against a rugged Giants defense, Shaw threw 3 touchdown passes, but New York kept pace with the Colts all afternoon.
Connerly gives to Gifford, throws a big block, and Frank glides 13 yards to the touchdown.
The Giants took the lead in the second half, and when it came down to the game's final moments, it became clear that Shaw was not John Unitas.
George Shaw drops back to pass, but this time Sam Huff is there to intercept.
I'm going to be truthful with you. George Shaw can never beat us, ever. There's only one man in pro football could beat us on a regular basis, and that was Unitas.
The Giants are over there letting the clock run out, and they're all laughing and carrying on. I said, well, so we'll get you. Sooner or later, we'll get you, you know?
The Giants were the winners of that game. That in itself may have had something to do with the mental attitude of the Baltimore Colt football team for the remainder of the season, because to a man, they felt that they were the better team.
Adding more fuel to the fire was a less than flattering article on the Colts, attributed to Giants quarterback Charlie Connerly.
Charlie Connelly's wife, Perry Ann, was a ghostwriter for, I believe, the New York Journal American. She wrote it as Charlie Connelly. I think the reference was that since both teams pride themselves on being tough, we showed we were tougher than the Colts.
And that was some of the things we used on the bulletin board for the championship game, things he said after the regular season game.
Of more immediate concern to Baltimore was the Western Conference race. The Colts still needed to clinch the title. And in a critical game, they found themselves trailing the 49ers by 3 touchdowns at intermission.
Being down 27-7 at halftime against a 49er team that had Y.A. Tittle, Joe Perry, Hugh McElhenney, and they were controlling the game, and we needed that game. And we said, hey, we're not out of this thing. So we're going to get out, we're going to get the ball, we're going to score. And that was it, man, and we went on out, and that's exactly what happened.
Unitas led the offense to a quick pair of scores, and then the Baltimore quarterback drove for the go-ahead touchdown by calling Lenny Moore's number repeatedly.
John was running him almost every other play. And after about 4 or 5 plays in a row, Lenny says, John, you've got to give me a break. And John just went back in the huddle, called a sweep to the left with Lenny carrying the ball again. But how Lenny maneuvered through all the 49ers and ended up scoring the go-ahead touchdown, I'll never know, because here the guy was exhausted.
Go to war, Miss Agnes. 73 yards to put the Colts on top for the first time, 28-27.
By clinching the Western Crown with 2 games remaining on the schedule, Baltimore now had several weeks to rest up and prepare for the one team they wanted to beat more than any other, the New York Giants. By the late 50s, Yankee Stadium was home to arguably the best baseball and football teams on the planet. In their very first year in the stadium, the Giants had rolled to the league championship by crushing the Chicago Bears. Almost overnight, they became Big Apple heroes, equal to their pinstriped counterparts.
I could tell by walking around and walking into P.J. Clark's, I'd get a table. And after we beat the Bears, I couldn't get one before. They didn't know who I was.
While the Yankees were still a very good team, the Giants and the Dodgers had both left. So the city was looking for somebody, for a team to love, and this was a team.
Their head coach was a towering ex-Marine from Arkansas named Jim Lee Howell, a man who believed in letting talented people do their jobs.
Jim Lee Howell, his greatest wisdom was recognizing he had Tom Landry coaching the defense, Vince Lombardi coaching the offense. Now, if you're a head coach,
with those two guys coaching, even Jim Lee realized and put his ego aside, and he just stepped back and let them do it. We used to kid a lot. About the only thing he did was take the roll call.
Howell's Giants were hardly present and accounted for in the opening weeks of the '58 season. New York split its first 4 games, suffering losses to mediocre Cardinal and Eagle ball clubs. Jim Lee's deepest worries stemmed from a sputtering offense that was consistent only in its inconsistency.
We had some talented players, but we didn't have blinding speed. We didn't have a lot of size. So it wasn't by any means a great team. They're a very intelligent team and a very opportunistic team, but not overwhelming by any means.
The Giants' defense was forced to carry the load, while the offense struggled to find itself. New York victories did not come easily, nor were they pretty to look at. The result was a climate of sarcasm and animosity between the two units.
Defense was leaving the field. And as we were going on, this offensive unit of ours who played second fiddle to the defensive squad, at least in my career that I know of, they're yelling at us, get in there and hold them.
It was kind of an adversarial situation, and the head coach, Jim Lee Howell, loved it. He just smiled and said, the madder the offense gets at the defense, the angrier the defense gets at all the work it has to do, the result comes out right.
In order to keep pace with the conference-leading Cleveland Browns, the Giants needed to win almost every week during the final 2 months of the season. Usually, Charlie Connerly and backfield mates Alex Webster and Frank Gifford squeezed out just enough points to win. But in a crucial game at Detroit, a costly turnover appeared to be the critical mistake that would knock New York out of contention. Then, the Giants got lucky.
Actually, they had the game won, and instead of punting the ball away, it was snow and ice on the field. I don't know whether it was a planned punt.
Yale Larry, as their punter, took off in punt formation, and we took over the ball and got some points out of it that we never should have gotten. We wound up beating them 19-17 when they went for a field goal, and it was blocked at the end of the game.
From the 25, Jim Martin kicks. Smari blocks it. A fantastic save with 1 minute and 13 seconds left on the clock. The Giants march on.
Their final regular season opponent was none other than the team they had been chasing all year.
So when we met the Browns, Yankee Stadium, we had to win. We had our backs to the wall. And they had Jim Brown, greatest football player I've ever seen.
Brown scored on Cleveland's first series, but despite blizzard conditions that followed, New York rallied in the second half to tie the game at 10. The outcome would ultimately be decided by a seemingly impossible 49-yard field goal try.
Many people were surprised that I was even in the game. In fact, the holder was the quarterback, Charlie Connerly. And when I got to the huddle, stuck my head in the huddle, Connerly looked at me and said, what the hell are you doing in here? Which is not exactly a way to build confidence.
Summerall kicks. It's good. The season's longest field goal. The Giants and Browns are tied for the Eastern title. There must be a playoff.
The first person that grabbed me when I came off the field was Vince Lombardi, who said to me, I'm quoting him now, remember this, he said to me as he was hugging me, you know, you son of a bitch, you can't kick it that far.
The win put the Giants in a one-game playoff, where the defense would have to shut down the NFL's ultimate weapon for a second straight week.
We get another shot. You get another shot that's a great one. The big man, wore number 32.
When I was with the New York Giants, I started the 4-3 defense. You know, I created a defense that could control the Cleveland Browns, Jim Brown and all. And that's the reason I developed it.
Landry's schemes held Brown in check all day, and Hall of Fame defenders Sam Huff, Andy Robustelli, and Emlyn Tunnell also made life miserable for the rest of the Cleveland offense. Meanwhile, the New York attack somehow found its way into the end zone.
I could have scored, I think, very easily. But Charlie Connerly was my roommate. I just turned around and flipped it to Charlie. And Charlie, at full speed ahead, and on 40-year-old legs, got it into the end zone. And I remember we went to the bench, and he came up to me and said, don't you ever do that again to me. And he had a few adjectives in there, too. So we went into the Baltimore game feeling pretty good about the fact that we just got there. But we were really a beat-up football team, and because of that stretch run when we won 7 of the last 8.
We'd been hanging by such a thread and struggling throughout the year. I really didn't think we were a very good team. I thought we had a lot of good breaks, but I thought at that point when the season was over, after that playoff game, that we were very tired.
As the exhausted Giants limped into the championship, the well-rested Colts were calm and collected as they approached the biggest game in their history.
When we got back the first week, I'd laid them off for 3 or 4 days for a little rest, and we came in on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and had some pretty good practices. As a matter of fact, on Saturday we thought we should have a little contact, so we had a little scrimmage. Then the following week, it was a routine week for us, and so it was old stuff to them, really.
Made them feel like it was just another week.
That's right.
But this was no ordinary week for owner Carroll Rosenblum, who persuaded staff assistant Bob Shaw to illegally spy on the Giants' Yankee Stadium workouts.
Rosenblum was enamored with getting an edge. He told Bob Shaw that if he was detected observing the Giants at practice, that he would guarantee him a job for life. So with that assurance, Shaw watched the Giants at work and came back and reported to Eubank, like on a Wednesday, that the Giants are going to be playing the same defense. So the Colts were prepared, and it wasn't so much that they got pertinent information, but it enabled them to just prepare for the Giants like there wasn't going to be any element of surprise.
Both teams arrived early on game day, but the fans did not. In fact, more than 6,000 tickets remained unsold by kickoff. The reason? New Yorkers simply didn't know that seats were still available.
The New York newspapers were on strike at that time. And so the game locally, other than the fact that we were in the championship game, didn't get a lot of publicity because nobody was writing about anything. And there weren't that many local tickets sold. The season ticket holders obviously knew about it and were at the game, but not the walk-up customers or what have you.
The owner, Carroll Rosenblum, made special offers to the fans. He would pay for half the bus ticket for anybody who wanted to come see the game. And since the Giants had available tickets, that was a nice arrangement for them too. There were a lot of Baltimore people.
Coupled with an enlarged Colts rooting section was an unseasonable game day climate that clearly favored the visiting team.
And it was an ideal day. We got great break on the weather in New York in December, late, and got a 45-degree day, with no wind.
Well, it was good for us. You could really smell the manure that they had put on the field to keep the field warm. Man, what a smell.
The Colts held their noses, but were all ears when Coach Weeb Eubank addressed the team in the locker room prior to kickoff.
Weeb, that game, had probably one of the greatest pep talks. And what was a pep talk, I don't know. But what he did, he went down the rosters.
Johnny Unitas, they didn't want you. You played with the Bluefield Rams or whatever, He said, and then Pittsburgh didn't want you, they cut you. But we got you.
Well, what he said to me, said, you call yourself an all-pro, and he just said, you ain't worth a damn. I mean, if you can't get the job done, playing against Robert Stelly.
Steve Mara, our field goal kicker, said, Steve, you've had a terrible year. You've just been awful. Now you've got to kick today. We're going to need you. You've got to put these balls through. He knew the buttons to push on each and every player on that football team, and he did a great job in doing that.
In a moment, the first quarter of the 1958 NFL Championship game. The Giants won the opening toss and elected to receive, but would begin the game with number 11 Don Heinrich at quarterback and not their regular starter, Charlie Connolly. Jim Lee Howell did this for a very specific reason.
He put Don in to see how they were going to react to our overall offense and let Charlie have a chance without the responsibility of actually taking the ball or passing it off or passing it downfield, and let him have a look at what they're doing over on defense before he put him in.
Connolly could not have liked much of what he saw. The Giants failed to make a first down in 3 possessions, but fortunately for New York, the Colts weren't doing very well either.
They were like two fighters that really weren't able to unload on each other. They were putting combinations together, but they were looking for the knockout punch, and they never hit the other one on the chin.
It just wasn't coming off, maybe according to plan, because we knew, when are we going to break this game wide open? Because we knew we could break the game wide open.
Halfway through the quarter, Baltimore finally shook off the cobwebs and unleashed what would be its longest play from scrimmage.
Unitas calls the signals. The left end, Ray Berry, splits by about 5 yards. Unitas back to throw. Gets good protection. Throws a long one. It is good to Moore. He has it at the Giant 40, down to the 30, down to the 25-yard line. Lyndon Crow was defending on the play, but Moore made a great catch.
Lyndon Crow was always one step away from Lenny Moore. He was a heck of a defensive back, but he was only one step short. So you had to put two men on him all the time. And when you do that, you're weaker on the other side with Raymond Berry.
Unknown to the Giants was that Moore had hurt his back, an injury that diminished his speed for the rest of the game.
So I came out and I told Weave, and he says, hey, don't say anything. Just, you gotta hang in there. So just go out so that they don't know that anything's wrong. I was basically a decoy, just occupying area.
Unitas calls the signal. Gets the snap. Hands off to Amici, the fullback. Up the middle he goes, and inside the 20-yard line, down to about the 19. Dick Modulewski, number 77. Carl Karolevich, number 21. In there to make the tackle. Unitas gets the hands off to Dupre, but Dupre goes nowhere. A loss of a yard on the play back to the 21-yard line. And it's going to be third down and 6 yards to go. And Dupre is the flank route to the right. The flip goes out to Lenny Moore. He tries to get around the corner, but he has dropped it about the 25-yard line.
Here, the Colts missed their first opportunity.
So now it's going to be Steve Myra trying a field goal. Spotted. It's blocked. It's blocked by Sam Huff and Carl Karolevich. And the Giants take over. Sam Huff, number 70, came driving through to block it.
With Huff's timely special teams play, New York regained momentum. Now seemed the perfect moment to put Charlie Connerly in the lineup.
Connerly at quarterback. The old master. Gets set to throw. Throws the quick one to Triplett, the fullback. He's over the 30-yard line. Tackle made by Chinnick, number 66. Giants up there at the line of scrimmage. The flip goes to Gifford, wide to the left. And he gets yardage. He's at the 35, the 40. He's at the 50, the Baltimore 40, the 35. And he's down to about the 31-yard line.
Key player in that was left tackle Roosevelt Brown, Hall of Famer, and who could outrun me and weighed about 250 pounds, and I think he made two key blocks on the same play.
Circled his own left end, cut back, and goes all the way down to the Baltimore 31-yard line. This time it's a straight T in the backfield. Connerly calls. Hands to Triplett. Wide to the left. He cuts back in, but gets just about a yard to the 30-yard line. Art Donovan, number 70, in there to make the tackle. Kyle Roach splits out. Gifford out to the left. Connerly rolls to his right. Throws a long one. No good. Intended for Kyle Roach down inside the 5-yard line. Straight T in the backfield. The end split. Connerly back to throw. He fires it. It is no good. Intended for Webster, but Webster fell down.
It was nobody's fault but my own. The ball was well thrown, and I should have caught it. In fact, I could have probably got in or gotten close to a touchdown. But, the good Lord wasn't with me that day.
From the 36-yard line, Pat Summerall boots it. It's good. Well, that's the end of the first quarter with the score of the New York Giants 3, the Baltimore Colts nothing.
The thing that I remember about that game as much as anything was the fact that I fumbled 3 times. That game wasn't even a contest if I don't fumble 3 times. And even though I think Baltimore was probably a better football team than we were, they don't win if I don't fumble 3 times.
Connerly calls the signal. He gets the snap, and he's going back to throw. He throws the flare to Gifford out to the left. Gifford away from one man is a fumble. And the Baltimore Colts have recovered. Ray Crouch in there for Baltimore. Recovers. The veteran defensive tackle. Coming up with it at the 20-yard line. Another big break for the Baltimore Colts. Unitas hands off to Moore. Wide to the left, cuts back in. He gets down to about the 15-yard line. Sam Huff has him. And Moore finally is dumped to the earth by Sam Huff.
These two teams are the two finest defensive teams in the National Football League, and the defensive play is really eye-popping.
Unitas calls the signals. Hands to Amici, the powerful fullback. Hits in behind the right side of his line. Is dumped by Catkavich and Sam Huff. Giants leading by a score of 3-0, but the Colts have the ball on the New York 12. Third down, 3 yards to go. Dupre flank to the right. The left hands to Amici. Amici gets in close to the first down. And again it was Sam Huff who made a tackle right down at the ankles, but it's a first down. Hand off to Moore. Wide to the left. He gets by one man. He gets down to about the one, and he gets ruled that he stepped out of bounds at the 1-yard line. Jim Patton bouncing him out of bounds. Snap back to United. Hand off to Amici, the fullback, and he's in for the touchdown. Well, it didn't take the Colts long to capitalize on that break. Ray Krause recovered a fumble at the 20-yard line. Myra trying for the extra point. It's good. Myra converts. And it is a 7-3 football game. The Baltimore Colts in front.
It had taken less than 3 minutes and only 5 plays for the Colts to score. Conversely, the Giants' offense continued to be a model of inconsistency for the remainder of the half.
Hand off to Triplett. Triplett gets nowhere. That'll be second down and 9 yards to go. The Baltimore Colts 7, the New York Giants 3. 9.5 minutes left to play in the first half of this game. Connerly back to throw, but he's smothered back inside his own 40-yard line. Bill Pellington came crashing through.
We didn't have that much talent, you know. As far as their defensive line, they were much bigger than our offensive line. And they just had a great defensive ball club, and we just couldn't handle them.
But then Baltimore got a bit too generous.
Simpson and Carl Tasso, the deep man for the Colts. Simpson takes it at the 19. There's a fumble. It's ruled that the Giants recover. It's the Giants' ball.
With the New York touchdown all but gift-wrapped at the Baltimore 10, the Giants committed their second mistake of the quarter.
Connerly calls the signal, gets the snap, flips out to Gifford. Gifford fumbles, and the Baltimore Colts recover.
There was little time for the Giants to mourn their squandered opportunity. For the moment, they faced an even greater crisis, replacing their biggest and best run stopper on the defensive line.
Rosie Greer really tried to play hurt, and we knew he was hurt, but really you had nobody to take his place, but they had to make a change. And so they brought Frank Uso in, who played right offensive tackle, to take Rosie's place. Well, he was no Roosevelt Greer.
We missed Rosie just because he was Rosie had to be handled. Rosie was much bigger than the rest of us, and he could get off on the ball.
Unitas wasted no time in exploiting Greer's absence, engineering a 14-play series, Baltimore's longest and most time-consuming drive of the game.
Unitas, being the genius that he is, always did things when he was ready to do it. Sometimes he wouldn't do it immediately, but he always kept it back here, and he said, "Hey, Alex, you still got it?" Or "Parker, you still think you can do this?" Boom, and then he would call it.
Our coach, Weeb Eubank, knew against the New York Giants defense that we weren't going to run on them all day, and I think told our quarterback, John Unitas, to throw the ball a lot.
Or, if necessary, carry the ball as well.
Unitas back to throw. Gets protection, runs for the ball. 45, 40, 35, down to the 30-yard line.
He was number one. He was our bread and butter. We could let nothing get close to him. If you go back 5 yards to pass, nobody got in. There was no man's land.
I think they gained over almost 200 yards the first half, and we were holding teams to like 80 for the entire game.
Unitas fakes to Amici, throws down in the end zone, and it's a touchdown. Ray Berry.
Berry's score capped off a flawless Colt drive, and perhaps the most miserable half of football played by the New York Giants all season.
Brown trying for the extra point. Ray Brown holding at the 10-yard line. It's good. Well, it's the end of the first half, and the score is the Baltimore Colts 14, the New York Giants 3.
While the Colt faithful were enjoying the halftime program and an 11-point lead, the shell-shocked Giants were probing for solutions to their woeful performance.
We were beating ourselves by mistakes. As he said, Frank's 3 fumbles. I fell down a couple times. A lineman would miss a block and key things like that, or Charlie overthrew the ball.
I think we all felt fortunate, as I recall, that we were that close. Because we were a beat-up football team. And we felt we could win. We knew we had the defense to win.
Landry, who didn't say a lot to the defensive unit, just said, if you keep doing what I'm telling you to do, we'll win, which was about as emotional as he got.
14 points, most of the time, is not going to win a football game for you. So you're down, so what? Now you got to hold them even more. And if you hold them, your offense comes back, you still win.
Coming up, the second half of the 1958 NFL Championship game. With the stadium of cheering fans to inspire them, the Giants took the ball in the third quarter, determined to improve on their first half performance. But the offense only went backwards. And when the Colts regained possession, they set out to bury their opponent for good.
Unitas back to throw on a first down try. Sets, looks, throws one down the middle. That's grabbed off by Mutchler, and he's tackled as he makes the catch by Patton.
Jimmy Patton caught me and really put me on my head. I know I came down, went up in the air and came down on my head, and I stood up and I said, where am I? I couldn't figure out what was going on.
The Giants' defense was equally as confused.
And Berry is tackled by Karalivitz and by Huff as he makes the catch. Good for a first down. Here is Unitas hitting his flanker man Moore. Moore is tackled him down, but on about the 4-yard line of New York.
If the Colts could have scored then, there never would have been a sudden death. It would have given them a comfortable lead, and they'd have put the Giants out of their misery.
No, we really believed in those days that we could stop people. I mean, that was a very, very strong part of our team personality, and we did it a lot. We had a lot of goal line stands. We just believed in ourselves so much that we really thought we could stop them with singleness of purpose.
They hand up to Amici. He swings, veers to his left, and hits to that goal line or close to it, but we've gotten no indication of a touchdown as Huff and Tunnell combined to bring Amici down with second and goal to go. Unitas on a sneak behind a wedge charge. Hits into the Giant defense. He picked up only about a foot or a foot and a half. He still has about a foot and a half to go for a first down, and it's third down coming up. To Amici. Amici behind the left side of the line, behind Parker, the big blocker. Pile drives into the New York line, and it looks as though that New York Giant defense has stymied Baltimore once again. And the ball is now on the 1-yard line, where it's fourth down and goal to go. And this New York defense is tremendous, but can they do it once more? They've had to dig deep into the emotional well.
John, in his most inventive way, called me to throw a pass. It was going to be a pitch out, and then Jim Mutchler was to release from his block and then end up in the end zone. And it was going to be a 1-yard pass, a very short one. And not having heard that play before, I completely blew it, and I thought it was a sweep.
Quick tosses out to Amici, swinging wide to the right, and he's thrown for a loss on the 5-yard line. And the tackle made by Livingston, and the New York Giants defense is great.
Went down and about 3 or 4 yards and turned out, and I'm right in the end zone. I'm looking, Allen, and I guess he couldn't see me. As I remember it, I was pretty much open.
While Mutchler waited for the pass that never arrived, a surprised Cliff Livingston made the defensive play of the game.
Why I was there, I have no idea. I just have no idea. And all of a sudden I realized that Amici, as soon as he got the ball, then I made the tackle.
Baltimore had a chance to get some icing on the cake, and the New York defense manifested itself.
We were energized. It transcended all the problems we had physically, and I remember feeling that we could take it all the way.
Handing off here to Gifford, and Gifford over the middle. Dewey moved it out to about the 10-yard line, a 5-yard crack there. New York has Gifford at left halfback, King at right halfback, and flanked wide to the right goes Webster. Here's the Connolly faking the King, throwing down the middle. Rodas in the open, he's got it, but he shakes loose one man, shakes loose another. He's been chased from behind and brought down on, there's a fumble on the play, and it's picked up by New York, and racing is Webster with the ball from the 20-yard line into the end zone. That's what happened. There's no markers down on the play.
Basically, I was just supposed to go around and hang out and hold the halfback so he wouldn't go back across the cut. But when I saw him catch the ball, I just took off down after him. I was fortunate enough to be there at the right time, but I wish I was a little bit quicker because I didn't make it. I got to the 1 yard line and I was happy to get out because I ran out of gas completely.
I swore there was nothing too good for Alex Webster. I would do whatever he wanted, shine his shoes there at the middle of the game, whatever it was, because he really did. He saved me.
Here is the head off to Triplett, and Triplett smashes in for the score.
Things like that particular play where they scored a touchdown really don't bother you that much. First of all, you weren't dominated. It was one 70-yard fluke play, which would never happen again. So it didn't discourage us at all.
Trying for the extra point is Summerall. Summerall's kick is good, and the score becomes 14-10.
The goal line stand and quick Giant touchdown had totally altered the complexion of the game. Now it was the Colts who were stumbling, and the Giants who were brimming with confidence.
And Connolly goes back to throw on second down, throws. It's good to Stelker. Stelker is grabbed as he makes the hook catch by Passett. That's the end of the third quarter. The score is Baltimore 14 and New York 10.
By the fourth quarter, the temperature had plummeted dramatically. Turf ice patches began to form, while both players and fans sought protection from the winter chill.
It got cold, I can remember that, and it was harder to hold onto the ball because our hands got cold and everybody got a little numb on it.
The players wore capes on the sideline against the cold. Today they have these parkas, or they have things that the hand warmers and all. They didn't have that then, and the capes gave kind of a medieval look to it all.
The ball on the 40-yard line of the Giants as we start the final period here with the score 14-10. Connolly fakes twice, throws down the middle, and Stelker's open. He's got it, and he makes the catch as Fumley tackles from behind on about the 15-yard line.
Snorker was 6'3" or 4", big guy, strong, and had great jumping ability, and he jumped up and caught the ball, and he made 2 giant plays on that drive.
Again, Connolly back to throw. First and 10 from the 15. Throws, hits, and it's good to Gifford. And Gifford goes in for the score. Gifford scores, and New York goes in front 16-14.
Whoever called the touchdown play, and again, I've heard that it was Wellington Mara tossing a Polaroid down, showing a shift that left me one-on-one with a Gimpy Colt. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. A lot of mythology develops over the years, and all I know is it was an easy 6.
And now it's Summerall kicking the extra point. It's good. New York takes timeout now. The score is New York Giants 17 and Baltimore Colts 14.
After dominating play for most of the afternoon, the Colts found themselves behind on the scoreboard. Gone, too, was the crisp efficiency of their offense, as big gains only seemed to come when penalty flags were thrown.
Unitas back to throw. It's incomplete. But let's see whether we got a score. We got a marker on the play. We're getting a marker on the play as the forward pass was aimed at Mutchler, and Mutchler was fouled on the play, which gives Baltimore a first down, 10 to go at the spot of the foul on the 38-yard line of New York.
But infractions alone could not sustain the misfiring Colt attack.
Unitas back to throw again. Sets, looks, throws one long down the middle, aimed to Dupree. Incomplete. It just bounced off his fingertips at the 5-yard line. On the 46-yard line of New York. 4th down and 11 to go. Here's the try for the field goal by Bert Reschishar. The kick, sailing high in the air. Ron Gibbs, the referee, says it's no good. And streaming onto the field come the members of the New York Giants offensive platoon as the defensive platoon once more gets an ovation as it leaves the field for New York, with the Giants leading 17-14. Connolly back to throw, does throw. It's good to McAfee, and McAfee races upfield for a first down on the 38-yard line of New York, with the tackle made by Ray Brown at right safety for Baltimore. Connolly back to Triplett. Triplett swinging wide to the left. Races across the 40 up to almost the 44-yard line before he's brought down on the play. Triplett taking one step towards the middle of the line, then sweeping wide to his left, and he moved that ball to the 44-yard line of New York. Hand off here to Gifford, sweep to the right, and Gifford cuts back, driving for the first down, and makes the first down as he crosses the 50-yard line, and gets down to the 46-yard line of Baltimore before Carl Tassef swings him down. New York's ball, and they're chewing out that clock. 7 minutes, 50 seconds to go. New York leads 17-14. Connolly takes, hands off to King, sweeping wide. He fumbles as a Baltimore scramble for the ball, and a Baltimore recovery, I believe. Looks like Lipscomb will come in and hit him, force the fumble.
The Colts' devastating front four had given the offense great field position for another scoring opportunity. And for a few brief moments, it appeared that the Baltimore passing attack had regained some of its equilibrium.
United's back on the New York 42. United's throwing a long one downfield aimed at Moore. He's got it along the sideline, but whether he made it inside or out, no, he made it outside. At the 3-yard line, a sensational catch, but just outside. Lyndon Crow was racing down the sideline, battling him for the ball. 7:10 left to play in the ball game. Back goes Unitas. Unitas throws. It's good to Berry. Berry is driven out of bounds on the 31-yard line.
Everybody on the offensive team got good splits. Instead of a half a yard, we got a yard and a half. We made them spread the defense out. And then I think the second half or the last quarter, they got help to it. They played their type of defense.
With New York leading 17-14. Baltimore. Unitas back. Robicelli drops him for a loss. Andy Robicelli on a bootleg play by Unitas. Robicelli made just an instant hesitation, decided it was a bootleg. He couldn't see the ball. Then he tore for Unitas and floored him for a loss on the 38-yard line of New York. Third down coming up for Baltimore on the 38-yard line. Here's Babb, New York, and here it's thrown for a loss again with Unitas, with the charge led by Moselewski this time, Dick Moselewski and Jim Tatcavage. Dick Moselewski and Tatcavage. This New York team is aflame defensively. They fired through on Unitas and dropped him for another loss. Fourth down and 27 to go. They're kicking. Brown is back on his own 40. He kicks, tails one down into the corner. Patton goes back for it, takes it, catches it on the 5, starts upfield to the 10, the 15. Driven out of bounds across the field. New York takes time out now. The score is New York Giants 17 and Baltimore Colts 14.
And I said to Gino, we're standing, and I said, you know, this is the first championship game we were ever in. I mean, we took a shellacking all those years in pro football. I said, if we lose this game, what a mistravity of justice or whatever the word is for. I said, because we're so better than these guys, and here we are fighting for our lives. And everything Gino says, yeah, you're right, Fatso. That's all.
New York's ball, first and 10 to go on their own 19. Connolly to Alex Webster. Webster cutting back. Smashes upfield to about the 24-yard line. And it's second down and 5 to go for the Giants. The game, that clock running, and New York taking all the time in the world, right up to the last minute. With now 5 minutes left to play in the ballgame. Gifford and Triplett in the back line with Connolly the quarterback. Connolly to Gifford. Gifford off the tackle is brought down to be tackled by Big Daddy Gene Lipscomb. A 288-pound, 6'6" right tackle for Baltimore. Third and 5 coming up now for New York. Here's Connolly back to throw now. Here's the throw. Good to Webster, and Webster, all he wants is the first down and steps out of bounds at about the 33-yard line. Here's Connolly now to Webster. Webster is hit at the line of scrimmage by the whole right side of the Baltimore line, led by Lipscomb and Joyce. Gain of about, call it no gain. They maybe picked up a half yard. So it's second and 9.5 to go. Hand off to Gifford. Gifford off the tackle. Smashes to about the 40-yard line with a tackle made by Carl Tassef in the secondary.
Now came a third down decision and the single most controversial play of the 58 championship.
And it's third down coming up now. Just a shade under 4 to go for a first down for New York. Connolly to Gifford. Gifford off the tackle. Smashes to about the 43-yard line. And it's going to be close as Gifford hugs that football.
And as Gifford cut back, I was there, so I made the tackle.
Here comes Big Daddy flying over the pile, piling on. Bam, there goes, breaks. He lands on Gino's leg and breaks it.
And I can remember laying there, and it hurt like hell. You know, if I wasn't a big man, I might have cried. But I remember Frank Gifford or somebody saying, "Okay, Marchetti, get up, the play's over," you know, and I'm hollering. I said, "Jesus, I can't get up." I said, "My leg is, you know, it's broken."
Then all thing broke loose because Marchetti broke his leg, and they hadn't marked the ball. And by the time they got him out of there, and now he put the ball down.
And I've been playing football a lot of years, and I've been running the football a lot of years, and there's no question in my mind what I saw was a first down. And there was no question in my mind I made the first down. I didn't even think about measuring it.
I remember sitting in the press box and watching the play evolve and saying to myself, he made a first down. And, you know, suddenly the official picked up the ball and marked it, and it was not a first down.
And he starts hollering, "I made it, I made it." And I says, "Hey, why don't you shut up? The official says you didn't make it, okay?"
In my own notes, which I still have, alongside of it I wrote short by a foot.
He made it, and if you look at the film, you know he made it. After the game, as they were all walking off the field, the official came up to Frank and said, "I'm sorry, Frank, I blew it. It was a first down."
But I know on the fourth down, we all wanted to go for it. And even Coach Lombardi yelled at it. And I think Landry wanted us to go for it.
And I had no idea. I didn't imagine that they were going to kick the ball. I said, these guys got to go for it. They've been moving the ball, moving it well. Why would they kick the ball? And Jim Lee Howell, I guess, made the decision to kick the ball because they thought they could stop us and get the ball back.
You know, we had the best punter in the league, and he kicked a good one, and he put him back into the hole.
There's the kick by Chandler, a high one coming downfield. Casa signals for a fair catch, makes it, and grabs that ball on about the 15-yard line of Baltimore. And in troops the defensive platoon for New York. In comes the offensive group for Baltimore. Baltimore is 85 yards away from a touchdown.
Barely 2 minutes remained in the quarter as the Colts sideline welcomed a surprise occupant, the injured Marchetti, who refused to be removed for medical treatment.
Gino would say, you know, put me down. I want to watch what's going on the field. And it was really an incredible picture to see an incapacitated Marchetti sitting up, unable to get up because of the broken ankle, but watching what was going on the field.
And as a captain, I thought it was important that I be there. I thought that being there might motivate him. And I thought, you know, also I'd like to see the end of the game.
2 minutes and 20 seconds to go, and the clock is running. United's back to throw. Set, look. Throws the long one downfield, aimed to Mutzler. Incomplete. The Colts ball, but the incomplete pass stopped the clock with an unofficial 2 minutes left to go. The Giants' redoubtable defensive platoon in there. Here's United's back to throw. Does throw. It's good. Is it or is it? Dupre had his back to us, and it's called incomplete.
Now the Colts needed a first down, either on their own or through help from a higher authority.
I had a little miniature Bible that I put down in my right thigh pad, always. And whatever the other guys did, some of them might have done their own little idiosyncrasy. Mine was, I had to have that little miniature Holy Bible down in my right thigh pad.
Third down coming up, 10 to go. Again, United is back. Set, look, throws out to the right. Good to his flanker man, Moore, I believe, Lenny Moore. And it is the first down for Baltimore. That's all he was looking for. Back goes United to throw. Set, throws. It's good to Berry. Berry in the middle of the Giants secondary. Shakes one man off, shakes another. Is finally caught up with at about the 50-yard line and down at the 50-yard line by Sam Huff.
I think they thought we might have been going to the boundary, and we had enough time to operate inbounds, which we did. In the last 5 passes I caught, I think 4 of them were inside routes. I basically am a fixer and a problem solver. I mean, you give me a problem, that's all I need. I'll find a solution to it, and if there's something not working right, I'm going to find a way to make it work.
First and 10 to go on the 50. He fakes, throws to Berry. Berry shakes off one man. Karlevitz is tackled by another at the 35-yard line of New York.
Karlevitz, the back over there, he was new to our system, and he wasn't quite sure where all the help was coming from. And as a result, he wasn't familiar enough with our defense to depend on it. He just tried to cover Berry too hard without using his help.
Baltimore
score. Tries to strike once more with 40 seconds left. United's back to throw. Does throw. It's good to Barry. Barry shakes loose the momentum to the 20, the 15. He's down on the 13-yard line.
I mean, I go to bed every night thinking Unitas to Barry, Unitas to Barry, Unitas to Barry. I mean, I got tired of hearing the announcers say it, you know, but you couldn't stop him.
And here comes the field goal team in for Baltimore, I believe, with 15 seconds to go. The clock's running.
The kicker they had was one of the worst kickers in pro football to tie the game, Steve Myra. I mean, it's the only kick he ever made, I think, in his whole career. He makes it in the most important game ever played.
We didn't like him because his father left him about $1 million, and he blew it all. He was suspended from the word go. He came in there and kicked the ball.
There's the kick, and the kick by Myra is good, and the game is tied 17-17. As Myra kicks one, and we're going to see the first application in history of the sudden death rule.
After 60 pressure-packed minutes, the Giants and Colts were about to play in the NFL's first ever overtime period.
Nobody had ever been in overtime before. We didn't know what to do. We Giants didn't know what to do. I sat on the bench next to our captain, Kyle Rote, and I said, "What happens now?" And he said, "I think we play some more."
Never before in the history of the National Football League or professional football has there been an extra period and the Giants won the toss, and they're going to receive. A most historic moment in football history. The New York Giants won the toss. They elected to receive, and they will receive at the north end of Yankee Stadium.
The first team that scores, field goal, safety, touchdown, that will win the game now, and the game will be over with the first score. That's what the sudden death rule means.
It was just like opening kickoff. I mean, it wasn't like, man, I'm drained or what. No, nothing, man. It was like, this was it.
Maynard takes it on the run on the 10 and he fumbles. He picks it up. He's at the 20 and he is down at the 20.
They were moving the ball fairly well all of the second half. So we didn't want that. We didn't want to be on the field as a defensive team. I knew I didn't want to be out there.
Connerly calls the signals. He gives to Gifford. Gifford wide to the right is at the 20. Gets to about the 23-yard line. Piled up there by 3 or 4 Baltimore Colts. 5 men up there on the line of scrimmage. The linebacker Shinnick just a yard behind. Fakes the triplet. Connerly back to throw. He throws. It is no good. Intended for Bob Snelker at the Giants' 45-yard line. The pass was just a bit off target. 3rd down and 6 yards to go. Fake to Webster. Connerly rolls to the right. Starts to run with the ball. He gets to the 30-yard line, very close to it. Let's see if he made the first down.
I think it was a fake quick 21 trap, roll right, and the our man turn in. And basically, the R was Schnelker, but they had him covered, and Charlie pulled it down and wasn't supposed to run. Charlie didn't like to run with the ball to begin with. And if he makes a first down there, we get to control the ball a little longer.
The ball is just about a foot short of the 30-yard line. John Chandler in the game to do the punting.
Jim Lee opted to punt, but the punt was super because Chandler kicked the ball and dropped it dead.
Chandler gets a tremendous kick away. Tassus being chased back to the 18-yard line. He takes it. He's to the 20 and slips and falls as he tries to cut.
We thought, well, God, at least we got him down here. All we have to do is hold them 3 and they'll punt and we're out and we're home free again.
John took charge and said, we're going to take the ball and we're going to go right down and score this time. No question about it. And you could just feel the confidence.
United gives to Dupre. Off tackle, Dupre still on his feet, comes across the 30 to about the 32-yard line. Frank Uso, who has played a tremendous game for the New York Giants in place of the injured Roosevelt Greer, was in on the tackle that time. The ball nose just over the 30-yard line in Baltimore territory. United's back to throw. Gets good protection. Throws a long, long one. And it's broken up by Lindy throw, intended for Lenny Moore, down inside the New York Giant 25-yard line. United back to throw. He hands to Dupre. Dupre comes in to the left side of the Giant line and gets a couple of yards to the 32 or the 33-yard line. Unitas, the quarterback, calls the signals. He's going back to throw. He throws the flare pass to Amici, the fullback. Amici's at the 40-yard line. Tackled as he gets to about the 41. It's enough for another first down.
I dropped back to help out Carl on Barry. And I went too far, and when he dumped the ball off to Amici, I came up to tackle him, but he picked up the first by about a yard. And I've never forgotten it, and that's been 40 years ago, and that's what I remember about the game.
Money Moore flanked out to the right, the left end split. Unitas gives to Dupre. Dupre swings wide, cuts back in, and gets to just about the 43-yard line. Second down, 7 yards to go in this pressure-packed football game in a sudden death overtime period. Unitas back to throw. Gets protection. Now it breaks down, and he's brought back in the Baltimore 35, 37-yard line. Dick Modzelewski from his left tackle position, along with Frank Yusso, dropped Unitas for a loss. Third down about 15. Unitas calls the signals. He's going back to throw. This time he gets protection. Starts to run with the ball. Now he throws. It's good to Berry. He's at the 45. Tries to battle away from the tackler, Carl Karolevich, but Karolevich holds him at the 43-yard line.
I knew it was Raymond Berry. And why can't we cover him? And he was not just getting open. He was getting wide open. And he was not just falling for first downs, he was breaking tackles, and the frustration of not being able to do anything about it was almost a helpless feeling.
Flanker out to the right, the left end split. The fake Dupre, the handoff to Michi's at the 30 to 25, out of the 20-yard line.
Unitas to Berry was killing us, so you cheat a little bit, on the field. So you cheat your position a little bit, and you drop quicker than I probably should have dropped. Never expected Unitas to run a trap in the middle. That's what he ran. And it was the perfect play for the offense.
Hand off to Dupre, cuts back in, gets to just about the line of scrimmage. Maybe a yard. Sam Huff in there to make the tackle. Emlyn Tunnell also helping out. Buzz Nutter is over the ball at center. Snap back to Unitas. He throws the quick one to Berry. He makes a fine grab at the 10-yard line. They're going to mark it at the 8-yard line. It'll be Baltimore's ball, first down and goal to go.
He put that ball by my ear to Raymond Berry. Put it between my hand and my helmet. You can't stop a perfect play.
But play was about to be stopped, at least for the record 45 million people watching on television. At the climactic moment of pro football's first overtime game, the TV picture suddenly and mysteriously went off the air.
The fans were so excited, leaning forward, and the sophistication of the television industry then was not what it is now. In the pressure of leaning against the cables, snapped the cables, and so they lost picture.
I felt that it was such a great football game that I hated to see something like that ruin the ending. And we got a great break.
Play will be held up now. A fan running out on the field with three of New York's finest trying to corner him.
He took the time to stop this gentleman and get him off the sideline so that he would not interfere with the game, and that's all the time that NBC needed to get the picture back on the air.
I found out later it was really an employee of NBC. I mean, my colleague and friend Lindsey Nelson, who was then an employee of NBC, identified the man and said he was an NBC business executive of some kind.
That he was told to get down there and do something to disrupt the game until they could regain their picture. I don't believe it. I would be surprised if any one of them was quite that smart to begin with.
Whoever he was, his broken field diversion got the game back on TV screens without viewers missing a single play.
Unitas calls the signal. He gives to Amici, and Amici piles into about the 6-yard line.
Now it was time for another Unitas gamble, a controversial play that, called by anyone else, might have backfired.
Baltimore at the line of scrimmage, second down 7. Unitas at quarterback, calls, he throws. Oh, a flare pass out to the right, it's good. To Mutchler, down to about the 1-yard line.
If the field was not frozen, I would have gone in the end zone. It wouldn't have been a problem because I would have been able to get my footing and just cut out, right through the corner down there. I'm just thinking, oh, thank God I caught it.
So I remember asking Unitas after the game, did you feel that was a big risk throwing this pass out in the flat that could have been intercepted? And he looked at me, straight at me, and he said, when you know what you're doing, you don't get intercepted. And to me, you can put that on his tombstone.
The Colts at the line of scrimmage. Flanker to the right, the ends are tight. Unitas takes, he gives to Amici, and the ball game is over. Alan Amici has scored the touchdown, and the Baltimore Colts professional football champions of the world.
Lenny Moore was not known for a great blocker. Never was known for that. He threw one of the best blocks that anyone has ever seen in the National Football League on a touchdown that Amici scored, because the hole was big enough that you could drive a Mack truck through that hole.
I expected to be hit, so I had my head down very low, and I ran low to the ground, and I just sort of bounced on the ground a couple of times. And by the time I got up, I must have been smothered by hundreds of people, and I actually lost the ball. And I remember Buzz Nutter, our center, had to fight some guy to get the ball back.
We try to get off the field, you know. I know somebody must have tried to pick up Weeb and said, "The hell with it, let's get out of here before we get killed."
After the game, of all individuals that I should encounter, one-on-one was Commissioner Burt Bell with two of his children. He said, "John, old boy, I never thought that I would live to see sudden death."
That's the end of the game. The final score, Baltimore 23, the New York Giants 17. We'll be back in a moment with the final wrap-up of today's game.
As night fell, the disconsolate Giants learned one of their teammates had suffered yet another defeat. The sports car traditionally awarded to the game MVP was going elsewhere.
I heard that in the press box, when we were ahead 17-14, that they had voted for the most valuable player, and that our quarterback, Charlie Connolly, had gotten the award as the MVP of the game. And then as the Colts rallied and came down and tied the game on Steve Myers' field goal right at the end, they changed their mind then and during the overtime period and gave it to John Unitas. And that's why Perry Ann Connolly said, "Mrs. Unitas is driving my car."
Here comes a fellow with this is the happiest expression this man has had in the football season of 1958. Here is the owner of the Baltimore Colts, Carroll Rosenblum. Carroll, what do we say?
Chuck, it's not the happiest expression I've had since we've been playing, but I think it's the happiest I've ever had in my life. You just can't say enough about these kids. They are the greatest.
Carroll, as I said earlier, the comeback that the football team made in the second half, I think, was one of the greatest tributes a team has ever paid its coaching staff.
No question about that. They proved that they believed in themselves, Chuck, and they've repaid the fans for all the good they've done for them.
And I hope that you'll forgive me for saying it, Carroll, but I'm quite sure that every man on this football squad also felt that he owed that kind of a crack to Carroll Rosenblum.
Well, it's very sweet of you. I feel the same way about them, Chuck.
The only thing we had was knee-high orange. You know, here's a grown men in the Second World War and all that. We can't even have a beer after a game. We had to go and buy our own beer. Then we would drink it.
Congratulations, Don.
Thank you very much.
This day has been a long time coming.
I can hardly talk. I'm so choked up, but geez, the kids were magnificent. Comeback like that is almost unbelievable. But I want to tell you, most of the credit on this ball game not only goes to the players, but goes to Weeb Ewbank and his fine staff. They've done a tremendous job.
As I was saying to Weeb, Don, what greater tribute can a ball club pay to its coaches than the kind of a comeback they displayed in the second half?
Well, they've done a magnificent job, and we're oh so proud.
Don, that goes from the top of the organization right on through. You've all done a great job, and all of us in Baltimore are extremely proud of our championship Baltimore Colts.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
As the celebration was winding down at Yankee Stadium, events were just beginning to heat up at Baltimore's Friendship Airfield, where delirious fans greeted their beloved world champions.
The Baltimore airport, from both sides of the road on the entrance road, automobiles were bumper to bumper all the way back out to the Baltimore-Washington Expressway.
That same night we came back to Baltimore, and I was sure we were going to get killed at the airport because the bus I was in coming off the plane, you know, there were people running around on top of the bus and everything else.
And the fans got on top of the buses and started rocking it like that, like we was going to turn it over.
Everywhere we went, there were banners all over the place. That's all you could see on TV. That's all you could read about in the papers. And it wasn't just that in Baltimore. It was like that in New York. It was like that in Chicago. People were just talking about that particular game.
We sold more papers that day, in December 29th, 1958, than any edition since World War II. When the Colts won, Baltimore felt as good about itself as it ever has.
After winning the 1958 championship, life was never the same for the Baltimore Colts. The players became household names, with stars such as Johnny Unitas receiving dozens of endorsement offers. Others parlayed their fame into fortune. Alan Amici went into the restaurant business, as did Gino Marchetti, with spectacular results.
We opened that restaurant was very successful in 1958. And from there, we ended up with 500.
Johnny Sample applied his winner's share towards an enduring family monument.
The house that I bought with that check, I still own that house. It's still in the Sample family. And one thing I tell my daughter, who's going to inherit everything when I leave here, that to make sure you keep that house in the Sample family no matter what happens.
The Colts made sure they kept the championship trophy within the city limits. In the 1959 title game rematch with the Giants, Baltimore had a much easier time repeating as kings of the NFL.
They were winning the first half. The second half, we just absolutely annihilated them. I think we must have scored 4 or 5 touchdowns, and the second half wasn't even a contest. In fact, I told Charlie Conley, I said, Charlie, you better get out of here before you get killed.
I intercepted 2 passes. I ran 1 back for a touchdown. I ran punts back and kickoffs back for about 180 yards in that game. It's probably one of the best games that I'd ever played, and we kind of ran them out of the building that day.
Although they would remain perennial contenders, this would be Baltimore's last world championship for over a decade. Meanwhile, the Giants would be title game bridesmaids 3 times over the next 4 years. But none of this seemed to matter in Manhattan. New Yorkers had fallen head over heels in love with the NFL and their Giants. Some of their biggest boosters were employed by television networks and advertising agencies.
When the Giants players had already established themselves as glamour boys, became a part of this surge in the popularity of pro football, it made perfect sense for the players to reap the benefits of being in and near Madison Avenue and in the capital of advertising and media and broadcasting of the country. I think it was almost a natural result of having played that game on national television.
Here's Frank Gifford, all-pro halfback. Hey, Joe, are you still using that greasy kid stuff on your hair? What else? Vitalis. That's what else.
I'm going to tell you the truth. We were sick and tired of baseball being the national pastime. And these guys would walk around, you know, and they had all the endorsements. And all of a sudden, after the 58 game, they started realizing who the Giants were.
I started in broadcasting in 1960 while I was still playing at CBS. Gifford started in broadcasting while he was still playing. Kyle Rote was on the air. I mean, that kind of thing was unheard of. That game, I think, opened a lot of doors for a lot of people, including me.
The Colt-Giant game did more than anything else in the history of the National Football League to establish professional football as a very viable television product. I think that convinced everybody that this is one of the best ways to spend your money on television.
I look back at it as the greatest game ever played for the NFL. I think it put the NFL on television. It was the first big game that meant something, where a lot of people were behind it, and a lot of people on television that watched it.
At that time, I think it was the greatest game ever played. I think there have been a lot of great games since then. It was not the greatest 60-minute game.
The greatest game ever played? No way. Because that game hasn't been played yet. Was it the greatest game I ever played? Give me a break. 3 fumbles.
And everybody kept saying, the greatest game that came out, the greatest game ever played. What do you mean, greatest game ever played? You know, it wasn't our greatest game that we played.
I think it was a pivotal game that ignited the country, ignited the flame of pro football enthusiasm like never before.
This game, played in 1958, when baseball was king, when pro football was still struggling for its audience. The fact that it was being played in New York City, I think this game clearly was a dramatic turning point in the history of the National Football League and the ensuing success of the National Football League. And for those reasons, and not for the mechanics or the execution of the game on the field, I do believe it was the greatest game ever played.